Gopi Janavallabha Girvaradhari Yashodanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jai Shri Radha Govardhan Dhari Bhagwan Ki, Krishna Balaram Bhagwan Ki, Giriraj Maharaj Ki, Narsinghadev Bhagwan Ki, Gauranitai Bhagwan Ki, Gaur Premanandi. So today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 9, verse 23. Narayanam Namaskrityam Narachaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Nasta Prayashu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So text 23, please repeat after me. Esha prapana varadora atma sakya yad yad karisyati grihila gunavataraha Tasmin savikramam idam srijatopi cheto. Yunjita karma samalam cha yatha vijayam. Esha prapana varado ramayatma saktya. Yat yat karishyati grihita gunavataraha. Tasmin savikramam idam srijato api cheto. Yunjita karma shamalam cha yatha vijayam. Esha prapana varado ramayatma shaktya. Yat yat karishyati grihita gunavataraha. Tasmin savikramam idam srijato api cheto. Yunjita karma shamalam cha yatha vijayam. Esha, this, prapana, one who is surrendered. Varadaha, benefactor. Ramaya, enjoying always with the goddess of fortune Lakshmi. Atma Shaktya, with his internal potency. Yat yat, whatever. Karishyati, he may act. Grihita, accepting. Gunavataraha, incarnation of the mode of goodness. Tasmin, unto him. Swavikramam, with omnipotency. Idam, this cosmic manifestation. Srijata, creating. Api, in spite of. Chetaha, heart. Yunjita, be engaged. Karma, work. Shamalam, material affection. Cha, also. Yatha, as much as. Vijayam, I can give up. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, is always the benefactor of the surrendered souls. His activities are always enacted through his internal potency, Rama, or the goddess of fortune. I pray only to engage in his service in the creation of the material world, and I pray that I not be materially affected by my works, for thus I may be able to give up the false prestige of being the creator. So please repeat after me this translation. The Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, is always the benefactor of the surrendered souls. His activities are always enacted through his internal potency, Rama, or the goddess of fortune. I pray only to engage in his service in the creation of the material world. And I pray that I not be materially affected by my works, For thus I may be able to give up the false prestige of being the creator. Purport. In the matter of material creation, maintenance, and destruction, there are three incarnations of the material modes of nature: Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara. But the Lord's incarnation as Vishnu, in his internal potency, is the supreme energy for the total activities. Brahma, who is only an assistant in the modes of creation, wanted to remain in his actual position as an instrument of the Lord, instead of becoming puffed up by the false prestige of thinking himself the creator. That is the way of becoming dear to the Supreme Lord and receiving his benediction. Foolish men want to take credit for all creations made by them, but intelligent persons know very well that not a blade of grass can move without the will of the Lord. Thus, all the credit for wonderful creations must go to him. By spiritual consciousness only can one be free from the contamination of material affection and receive the benedictions offered by the Lord. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunditamena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. So, reading from Canto 3, Chapter 9, verse 23 today, the title of this chapter is Brahma's Prayers for Creative Energy. So, this is Lord Brahma, and he is praying to the Lord, to Lord Vishnu, to Lord Krishna, his creator. He is praying in this way. So, at the end of this chapter, at the end of all of Brahma's prayers, there is a benediction offered. And I'll put that out there first. So, for all the chapters of the Bhagavatam, for most chapters of the scriptures, when we read them, then at the end there is a Shrutifal. Shrutifal means the fruit of hearing. So, for this chapter, the fruit of hearing, the benediction that is being given to us, is that by reading, one who reads and recites all these prayers of Lord Brahma, all his desires will be fulfilled. So, this is the benediction of this chapter. And other chapters, of course, they have other benedictions. So, these prayers of Lord Brahma, he is praying like this because he is going to go now and start creating all of creation. So he is praying like this to get mercy from the Lord. And this verse and this purport actually pretty deep. It we can really explain it for a long time in using different angles. But the important things that I will talk about, and then maybe more will come up in the discussion afterwards, is that firstly, going to the purport, is that there's this the guna avatars of the Lord. So guna means qualities. So the guna avatars of the Lord, there are three. There is Brahma and Vishnu and Mahesh, who are Brahma, Lord Brahma we know. Vishnu we know, he's Krishna, and he's expanded as Vishnu for the purpose of creation. And then there is Mahesh, who is Lord Shiva. So guna, each of these represent different qualities for creation, maintenance, and destruction. So who is the creator? Brahma. He's saying the prayers, he's asking for mercy. And so he is the creator. He is the guna avatar. He is in the mode of creation. So he's in the mode of passion. That's Lord Brahma. Then we have got Lord Vishnu, who is the maintainer. Lord Vishnu, as the maintainer, he is in the mode of goodness. And then we've got Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva, he is the destroyer, he is the destructor. And he is in the mode of He represents the mode of ignorance. Not in the mode of ignorance, he represents the mode of ignorance. So these are the three guna avatars of the Lord. So the Lord, like I was saying, we can actually explain this in different ways using different lenses or different angles. So there are different kinds of incarnations of the Lord. In particular, there are six. One of them is the Guna avatars that we talked about now. The other is the Purusha avatars. Those are the Vishnus. The three Vishnus, the Garbhodakshai, Karnodakshai Vishnu, and the Shirodakshai Vishnu. So those are the Purusha avatars. Then you have the Leela avatars, the different incarnations of the Lord that comes in different pastimes, like Lord Vamanadev, Lord Kurmadev, Lord Matsyadev, Lord Nrsingadev. So these are the Leela avatars. Leela means pastimes. Then you have the Manvantara avatar. These are the avatars that come for the time periods. And then you've got the Yuga avatars, again for the different time periods. And then the Shakti Avish avatars. The Shakti Avish avatars are the empowered incarnations. So these are the six different categories of incarnations of the Lord. And today, in this purport, the Guna avatars are mentioned. Who is the most prominent Shakti Avesh avatar that we know? Jesus Christ, Srila Prabhupada as well. So Shakti Avesh avatars mean the Lord has given, he's given this particular personality a bit of his spiritual potency, and this personality therefore has the Lord's energy in him and is doing the Lord's work. So Prabhupada is one such very prominent example, and Jesus Christ is another, and there are many others. So these are the three guna avatars of the Lord representing the three different modes, material modes of nature. So the Lord Vishnu, he is representing the mode of goodness, and he is in the mode of goodness to maintain the entire creation. And he does this based from his internal potency. His internal energy. So how many energies does the Lord have? He's got three different energies. It's quite easy to remember. Like there are three modes of nature. There are three types of energies of the Lord, and these three are the external, the middle, and the internal. So the external energy is material nature, presided over by Mother Durga. The middle energy are all the living entities, all the spirit souls, that's us included in that. And then the internal energy is presided over by Srimati Radharani. That is Krishna's internal potency. And then in Krishna's internal energy, he's also got three different categories there, which are the Sambit, the Sandhini, and the Ladini. So that's the time, the existence potency, the bliss potency, and the knowledge potency. So that's inside. The internal potency has got these three divisions as well. And Krishna is, in particular, in his internal potency, in particular, he is representing the time factor. He is existing in the existential potency, the Sandhini potency. So the time, Krishna represents time. His body is made of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. And in particular, he is present in that eternity part. So we know in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, time I am. So in this way, he is representing time. And through his internal energy, through his internal potency, which is under the jurisdiction of Radharani or Lakshmi Devi or Rama Devi, as is stated in this purport. He is doing this whole job of maintenance and also all his other different activities. So, Brahma, who is only an assistant in the modes of creation, he wanted to remain in his actual position as an instrument of the Lord rather than getting very proud and thinking of himself as the creator. So, this is why he is praying. This is why he is saying these meaningful prayers that, dear Lord, what is he praying in this verse? He's saying that I pray that I only engage in your service for the creation of this material world, and I pray that I not to be materially affected for anything that I do, for any work that I do, so that I might not get falsely proud. Now, Lord Brahma, as we may or may not know, he is actually our guru of this sampradaya that we are in. So, this sampradaya or this lineage, sampradaya means lineage. So, this lineage that we are in, it comes from Krishna. And then Krishna spoke it to. So, if you pick up the Bhagavad Gita, right, and you open the first few pages, you will see the lineage. You will see the descending process of how um, we are now linked into this lineage. So, firstly, Krishna, he spoke to Lord Brahma, and then Lord Brahma spoke to his son Narad Muni, and then Narad Muni spoke to his devotee, his disciple Srila Vyasadeva, who then spoke to Madhava, to Padmanabha, to Nirhari, to another Madhava, and then going all the way down, coming, we come to Srila Prabhupada. And then we can see ourselves there attached to that lineage. So the name of this lineage that we are in is called the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. So Lord Brahma is actually our spiritual master in that way. And there are 4 such lineages that are bona fide. Outside of this, other lineages you will have to look at very carefully and examine through the eyes of scripture to see if they are bona fide. So these 4 lineages, would anybody like to say what they are? The Sri Sampradaya or the Lakshmi Sampradaya? Sri or Lakshmi? The Nimbarka Sampradaya, that's the Kumar Sampradaya. The Kumar Sampradaya. Then there is the Rudra Sampradaya, Lord Shiva's Sampradaya, and then there is us, the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. So Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, the Lakshmi Sampradaya, the Shiva Sampradaya, and the Kumar Sampradaya. These are the 4 different lineages, and and um, and we know that Jesus is the son of Krishna, and we know that Prophet Muhammad is a prophet. He is like Prabhupada, spreading the holy word around. And that Allah is another name of Krishna. So these are the bona fide religions. And just like when I was working on the Sunshine Coast, and there was this nurse, and like a lot of people are very, very confused, as we know. And she was saying, I go to this church, and the name of this church is what? And I said, what is it? And she came up with this name, and she said it's like the Blue Nation or something along those lines. And I said, oh, right. So which, I kind of know a little bit. So I said, is it Pentecostal or is it Catholic, or, where does it come under? So I was trying to understand. And she's like, no, we just a group of us friends. We formed it. It's called the Blue Nation. And we don't really, we don't follow any of those things. And, these are our rules. And the rules weren't really, um, you know, following any sort of principles in any way. So it was like a concoction, basically. And this is people who are in this world can be very, very confused, very much in ignorance, as the scriptures describe. And it's actually our job as devotees to try to save people from the suffering, because ignorance actually means suffering. People are suffering when they don't know. Imagine if that lady knew that the name of God is Krishna, or other names of God, and that by following these names and by following the bona fide scriptures, I actually can go back to Godhead. I can actually experience peace and happiness. Then how much happier she would be. I mean, this is just one person that I met. There's so many souls in so many different degrees of ignorance. And our job, really, as part of this movement, which we want to keep moving, is to try to enlighten, try to share this big gift that we have, and we share it in different ways. We share it, the first thing is, when we share it, we should not disturb. We should not disturb anybody. Because if we end up disturbing people, they are too upset to actually get the message. So when we share, we firstly need to know who we are talking to. Therefore, we know, how do I pitch this? Where do I pitch this? So some people are only ready to receive prasadam and be happy with that. Some people can receive the holy name. Some people you can actually talk philosophy with. Some people you can only engage their time, their money, their senses, whatever talent they have, you can only engage them in Krishna service in whatever capacity they are willing to give. So it's all a very voluntary process, and it actually is our right, because we have this gift, to try to share it with others. And in this way, we become endeared to the Lord, firstly. Secondly, we accrue great spiritual merit for ourselves. Thirdly, we are helping so many people also go back. So there's just benefit after benefit. So one thing here that is said in this purport is that is the way of becoming dear to the Supreme Lord and receiving His benediction. So what is the way? Who is showing us the way? It's Lord Brahma. He's showing us the way. What is He? What has He done to get this benediction? He is praying. And like I said, He is our spiritual master. How is He praying? We need to learn. We need to learn from His example. So how is He praying? He is saying, do not let me Please do not let me become puffed up. So he's saying, please do not let me become puffed up by thinking myself the creator. So this is really important, that we actually, I'll get back to this to explain, because it is a little bit subtle how to not think ourselves the creator. So what is said is that it's actually foolish people who end up taking the credit. So we don't really want to be foolish, do we? I mean, it's something that we want to avoid. We all try to be smart, act smart, so that others think highly of us. But actually, it's what's inside that matters. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that how do you know who somebody is? You know by their words and by their actions. So, what we speak, how we behave, says a lot about us, and that will only happen if it is there in the inside. So, in the inside, what we need it to be there is this humility, that I am actually not the creator, I am not the doer, Krishna is the doer. And it is an intelligent person who can understand this, because an intelligent person knows that it is described in the scriptures that not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. So sometimes we think, oh, this happened, or that must be an error, it must be a mistake, it wasn't meant to happen. It was just like, let's just sort of, disregard it. It wasn't meant to happen. But everything is meant to happen. Nothing is an accident. It's Krishna is in charge. Everything is synchronized and happening according to a higher plan. So nothing can move, not even a blade of grass, without the will of the Lord. And therefore, all the credit for wonderful creations must go to Him. And in this way, by giving credit where credit is due, ultimately it is due to the Lord. Krishna is the cause of all causes, Sarva Karana Karanam, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha, Anadi Radhir Govinda, Sarva Karana Karanam. This is the first verse of the Brahma Samhita. It is very, very important. This verse you can unpack and unpack and unpack and unpack even more. Every line of it, it's so good. So, Sarva Karana Karanam, He is the cause of all causes. And therefore, we must give credit to Him. And by giving credit to him, what happens is we get the blessings. Of course, Krishna actually likes to give credit to his devotees. Krishna really likes, like he does something, but then he doesn't take the credit. He gives it to his devotees. Can anybody give me an example, maybe, of such a time?
Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita,
Yes.
Krishna was doing everything himself, but he wanted Arjuna to fight.
Yes, exactly. That's a very striking example that Krishna gave all the credit to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, and he put Arjuna there to be the questioner, to try to get all the answers, and he was just acting as his chariot driver, although he was actually doing everything. So, by not taking credit ourselves, by giving credit to the Lord, there are two things that happens. One of them I just said. What is it? We get the blessings, right? We get the mercy, but there's another thing that happens. And the other thing that happens is we don't get the contamination. We don't get the after effects, we don't get the side effects. So we don't get any contamination. And otherwise we get the material contamination. So what happens is that it's very subtle, and like I said, we can really talk about this verse for a long time, because it's like you can explain it quickly, but then there's so many deep layers to it. So what happens is, if we do something. Okay, the probably the easiest example is food. So if we eat something which is not offered, that is a material thing then, isn't it? What happens? We eat it, we enjoy our tongue like anything, but then after that, because it's got all the karma in it still, we suffer. So it might not happen that very day, but it might happen, later when that karma fructifies, but then the suffering is there. Whereas when it's offered, it's free from suffering. It's free from that karma, firstly. Secondly, we actually get blessings. We get spiritual progress by eating sanctified prasadam. So it's like really, really huge, this blessing. It's not that it's only free from karma, that in itself is perfect, but it's a positive step. We are actually going closer to Krishna simply by eating prasadam. So, so, in this way, every action that we do in this material world has an opposite but equal reaction. That is what karma is. To get free of karma, we need to offer everything to the Lord and also accept Him as being the creator. So, we need to learn from Lord Brahma how to pray, and we need to never forget that Krishna is the cause of all causes. We are happy when we do this. So one thing that I said I'd get back to is giving credit where credit is due. So in this world, what we see is stealing credit. Somebody does something, but then somebody else takes the credit for it, and it's not at all good. What happens is, like in history, we've seen this repeated many, many times, not just in the spiritual spheres, but also in the material spheres. Like somebody has, for example, made a great big creation, and then somebody else kills that person, moves that person out of the way, or that person isn't known already, so this other person puts his name to it and patents it. So materially it happens, and spiritually it happens as well. So what happens when credit is taken wrongly or snatched is that there is the suffering associated with it, which we can't, that person might have gotten away at that point in time stealing somebody else's invention, and the whole world might know that, oh, this person invented this thing, but that's not true. Krishna knows that the other person invented it, and that person was not well known, so his name isn't in all the history books. But then what happens is this person then suffers. There is the reaction for stealing the credit. How we can see it in the scriptures, it's explained that somebody who is envious tries to minimize. Say I have made a very nice cake. I'm not good at making cakes, by the way, but it's just an example. It looks beautiful, and it's, looks really gorgeous. It's iced nicely and everything. And and I've gone away for the day, and then somebody else comes along and says, I made that cake. And of course, Krishna knows, even if nobody else over there knows. And then the other thing, or the other scenario that might happen is somebody might say, so some like people might go, oh, who made that cake? It looks beautiful. And then somebody who knows might say, Kishori made it. But Kishori, it must be a fluke. She doesn't know how to make cakes. This must be just, somebody else must have done the icing or something. So it's like minimizing. So when you minimize somebody else's service, that is the definition of envy. That's what the scriptures say. And the other thing that the scriptures say is we must stay away from envious people, because what happens is we get tainted. Otherwise, we can get into the same mentality. So the opposite is actually magnifying, not minimizing. So the opposite of that scenario, to not be envious, how do you not be envious is you praise somebody. If somebody's done something really nice, like for example that cake, then the person who knew could instead be saying, "Oh yeah, Kishori made it. Isn't it wonderful? It looks great. She's done a wonderful job. She must have taken so much time to do it. Because I know she said she's not very good at doing it. So to do this, it must have taken her so much time and effort. So you magnify it. So that's what the scriptures say. You even if there is one little good quality, magnify it. That's going back to being the bumblebee, the honeybee, the nectar collecting bee, rather than the fly. So the bee goes and settles in a nectar collecting place, in a nice place, sees the good, whereas the fly, no matter there's so many nice flowers around, just goes to the dirty place. So that's how not to be envious. The practical thing is how not to be envious is to praise somebody who is doing something good for the Lord. And ultimately to not be envious of Krishna, to give him credit, because he is in charge of everything. He is the ability in man, he is the time factor, he has provided us with the raw ingredients, he has given us the intelligence. So what is coming from us? It's the incentive that we have. It's the free will that we have, that we put to do something for the Lord, to do service to the Lord. But ultimately, everything needs to be credited to Krishna. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it says that we have a right to perform our duty, but we are not to be attached to the results of that, because it's our right. We do the duty, but then Krishna is in charge of the results. Krishna gives you the results as he may. And that the Lord is always, this is one of the lines in this verse, but he's always the benefactor. He's always the well-wisher and the reward giver of the surrendered soul. So we must not fear that I've done all of this, I'm not taking the credit for it. And then how am I going to get rewarded for it? So the answer is that Krishna will look after you. Krishna will maintain what you have, and then he will bring what is lacking. So we must not fear. So say, for example, going back to that example, I made that cake, I put it there, I went away, and nobody knows who did it, but Krishna knows. So he will do it. He is in our hearts, and he is actually going to look after us. He is the benefactor and well-wisher of the surrendered soul. And then one thing here in this purport, it said that his activities are always enacted through his internal potency, who is Rama, Lakshmi Devi, Radharani. That Radharani is acting in this way. And we have Lord Balram's festival, Lord Balram's appearance day next week, Thursday. And Lord Balram is Adi Guru. He is the original spiritual master. And Lord Nityananda is his expansion. And so we firstly come under the protection, the shelter of Lord Nityananda, Lord Balaram, who is the original spiritual master. Our Guru, Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual masters, they all represent Lord Nityananda, Balaram. Now, when we have received Lord Nityananda, Balaram's mercy, when we have received this, we only then can get the mercy of Radharani. So then we are in the inner circle of Krishna's servants. So Krishna is, then ultimately Radharani also acts as the Guru then. So Lord Nityananda takes us to Radharani. We need Lord Nityananda's mercy. Without this we cannot get the mercy of Radharani, who then takes us to Krishna. So, okay, I'll stop here. Is there anything that anyone would like to say?
I wouldn't mind. Go for it.
Oh, you go first.
That's fine.
Hey, Ramani, thanks for your class. Just have a question regarding the Shakti of Ace Avatar. I've heard a few different explanations. Banaswami was mentioning one time that the Shakti of Ace Avatars are given in scripture as scheduled times when they come. But people like Jesus and Prabhupada himself, they're not necessarily Shakti of Ace Avatars, but vibhutis. They've been empowered by Krishna to do a specific role.
Mm-hmm.
But the Shakti of Ace Avatars, Prithu Maharaj and Parashuram, they're actually scheduled.
Can I elaborate on that?
Yeah.
No, not really. So that, of course, everything is stated in scripture as to the different incarnations and the time they appear, the village they appear, the parents' names, all of that. That is something I will need to look into, the scheduling or the different Shakti Avesh avatars and who they are according to scripture. Thank you for mentioning that. So Prithu Maharaj, you mentioned one? Sure. Okay. Does anyone else want to add to what Krishnagant Prabhu said? No. Okay.
I was just going to ask a question. You know, we hear that Krishna, like not a blade of grass, moves without the will of the Lord. But then at the same time, when it comes to the material energy, Krishna kind of has nothing to do with it, like in a personal sense. So you hear those two things and they can almost sound conflicting. So could you elaborate?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So what happens is that those souls who are surrendered to the Lord, who are already in the process of devotional service, who have the mercy of the Lord in one way or the other, they are under spiritual energy and are being spiritually looked after. So when something happens to them, we can say it's the will of the Lord. Other people who are not yet surrendered, they are under the jurisdiction of material energy, still under Durga Devi. So suffering and enjoying, like the waves, the little bit of enjoyment, but then a big wave of suffering. So that's still under Durga Devi. And when one is realized, purified enough to surrender to the Lord, then Durga Devi herself takes them to the internal energy, to Krishna's energy. And they are then under spiritual energy. So there's... Yeah, go ahead, actually.
Sorry. So then you could understand that the souls that are under the material energy, they're based... What happens to them is they're just purely karma?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yes, it is karma. Whether it be from this life or another life, it is karma. Once they are realized and surrendered, or if they have some previous credit from a previous lifetime, all of that can also be acting. And we cannot really judge. It's very hard because, oftentimes we see somebody who seems to be a gross materialist and not at all a devotee, something really nice happens to them. And then we think, how come? I'm here, I'm the devotee doing all of this for Krishna, nothing good's happening to me. But it would probably be past pious credit. Like you see people who are very, very rich in this world, and in the Bhagavad Gita it's said that if you have a good birth, you're born in a good family, you have a good education, you look nice, you've got good looks, or you have a lot of money, that's a sign of previous good credit. And the reason you have all of that in this life, the reason is so that you can perfect this life. You have a lot more time, and you use that time to do devotional service. That's the only reason you have all of those things. But people misuse those things. So all of that is from pious credit, and we can't really judge. It's really Krishna who knows who is where on the path back to him. But yes, grossly it is like that material is under material energy, and spiritual is looked after by spiritual energy, and that is our insulation. We still are in this material world. The material laws still apply to us. There is still enjoyment and suffering, but what is different is that the suffering is minimized. And what is also different is that we have the philosophical understanding. And most importantly, the consciousness needs to be there, the understanding needs to be there that, dear Lord, whatever you are doing, you have your plan. I might not be able to understand it at all at this stage because I'm suffering so much, but I know that it is only a little bit of what I'm actually supposed to be suffering. And also, it is said in the scriptures that one who does not get angry on Krishna for their suffering, that person is qualified to go back to Godhead. So it's a big thing.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything?
Just to add to that, to know that any suffering, is minimized, but also that any goodness in your life is also just maximized.
Yes.
All your tiny efforts are just rewarded million times. So
Thank you very much for that, Bobby. I did want to say that, then I thought, okay, it's all right. Yes, so that's so important.
When they say you take one step towards Krishna, he takes one of his steps is a million universes. So,
Yes, that's so
translated
true.
like that.
Yes. So not even a little bit of endeavor is wasted on the spiritual path. So that should give us a lot of hope. Sometimes we can feel that we are doing something and not really getting anywhere. Maybe chanting our japa every day but not really getting anywhere. But actually every endeavor that we make, Krishna is much, much more eager to have us. Like we take one step, he takes 7 or more steps towards us. And every little thing we do is magnified. All right. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai.